good evening, Ghouls and Fiends. I've now hit record. You can tell it's the end of year and I'm not that used to streaming much anymore. I forget to hit the usual button that I hit every other week. But yeah, it's Ministry of Horror time. We're going to be doing the Ghoulie Awards a bit later on. And as mentioned before, I forgot to hit record. The Christmas period, I've been given tons and tons of books. I've also bought tons and tons of books. It's gotten kind of crazy, but I love it. But that does mean, and it's a good money-saving thing, because in the new year I will be getting married. I won't be buying any more books, so I'll be able to actually save for the wedding and whatnot. But I'm not without new hobbies. So I've been playing a few games recently in the various sales. Most notably, I mean, the one game that I've been generally kind of playing for a little while has been Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation. Really am enjoying that. It's good, it's scary, it makes me jump. I'm having a great time playing that, but I do have to pick and choose when to play it because the PlayStation's in the living room and the dogs can be a little bit annoying when you're trying to play it. So I kind of play that every so often, but on the Xbox, which is in my office, I've been playing Life is Strange Double Exposure. I do love the Life is Strange games. I am finding this one. I would say I'm finding this one a little slower to get my attention, but then I'm pretty sure every Life is Strange game, except maybe Before the Storm, I found took a little bit of trial and error to to get my full attention, so to speak. But with the news that there is going to be a Witcher 4, I dusted off my old save of The Witcher 3 and jumped back into the DLC for Blood and Wine, which is the one that I never finished. Not for any particular reason, just I'd played through the whole base game and the whole I can't remember what the other DLC is called. But picked up in the sale, because it was down to a more modest price, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Now, if you're new to the channel, you'll probably know I've not really ever mentioned Warhammer. It's not something that I've necessarily ever really been into, never really had that much of a passing interest in, to be fair. But a little while ago on this show, when we were on the MOS network, I did a little video which got quite good views. I think it's now hidden on YouTube because the MOS network is no more. Where I had picked up a kind of starter pack of Warhammer and thought, I've got like a passing interest in the visuals. I don't really know anything about the game. I don't know how the game's played at all. Still don't. I don't know anything about the lore, but the whole artwork of it does look really cool, and the approach to painting and putting together these figurines. I grew up collecting airfix, like the model airplanes and model like cars and tanks and stuff. And I kind of thought, well, I used to enjoy that. Let's try that again, Let's revisit the old hobbies of yesteryear. So I had a little go at doing putting together a figurine, a miniature, I should say, and painting it on a recording. The views are pretty good. I did get some very helpful information in the comments because I went in there completely blind. I did not know anything about base layers. I did not know about, you can't just use the paint directly from the pot onto the figurine. You need to be diluting it with water and doing various different layers. Didn't know any of that. So, jump forward a year or so. I've now picked up Space Marine 2. Instantly hooked from the opening prologue tutorial level. Like, it's badass. It's got the uber violence of Gears of War, which I appreciate is probably influenced by Warhammer because Warhammer came much earlier than Gears of War. But I love the original trilogy of Gears games. But it's just melee gun combat melee against hordes and hordes and hordes of Xenos. Badass. So I'm like, okay, I'm kind of into this shit now. And I've been kind of ill the last week, which is why the recording schedule's been a bit out of whack. 'Cause I've had kind of 2 illnesses in a month, which is not usual for me at all, really. You probably hear it in my voice. I'm probably still a bit nasally. But anyway, I took a trip to Milton Keynes. I went to the Warhammer shop. Sorry, audio listeners, just rolling off screen. I went to the Warhammer shop, and first and foremost, very friendly, I found. Secondly, it's not cheap in there, is it? It's not cheap. But I picked up a few things. So if you're watching this on YouTube or watching this on twitch.tv, where we are live, twitch.tv/Tesius, TZIOS, I picked up the core book, which is full of awesome artwork, lore on all the different factions, how to play the game, even how to paint. So I'm definitely going to have to give that a read. Picked up a Mechanica Standard Grey base spray paint. I believe that's a spray paint. Set of paints and tools. Useful. And also Company Heroes Space Marines. I think this is a slightly more expensive one than the other one that they had, but I thought the Heroes looked a bit cooler. It looked a little less generic. So yeah, we're doing that now, and I think it was a mixture of two things. It was a mixture of playing Space Marines 2 and getting kind of hyped on that, but also where I've been putting together the figurines for the Aliens desktop game. There's obviously the Queen alien that I put together. She's looking good. I've also put up. I've got standard bishop, not painted yet. I am going to try and paint these, although these are very small. We've also got torn in half bishop. There we go. And we've also got enraged Ripley. That is Ripley holding Newt with the flamethrower. And then I'm halfway through building Ripley in the power suit, the power loader. But then that will be my expansion set done. And then my pal Tom has the base game, so he's got quite a few Xenos to put together. So getting into tabletop gaming, finally. Something I will readily admit that I looked down my nose upon growing up, but seems pretty cool. Hey, Eddie is in the chat. Eddie the Beast, how's it going, Eddie? Hope you've had a great 2024. Eddie says nothing cheap about Warhammer. Well, yes. I don't think it's going to be a hobby I'm going to be rushing into, especially with the wedding this year. But I'm looking forward to doing some of it. I think New Year's Day. I don't necessarily have any plans. Do want to very early in the new year go and watch Nosferatu. Very hyped about that. But yeah, maybe if I've got a spare bit of time, I'm going to do some figurine, miniature building, and maybe try some painting off stream, that is. They're kind of like the main things. So yeah, we've been able to do a bit of gaming. We've been able to do bits and bobs, and I've been able to watch a couple of films. So during my jollies to Milton Keynes shopping mall, I picked up a few films from HMV. Got some good deals in there. I used to love going to HMVs back in the day, and then for so long it's been, online, going on Amazon, the convenience of just finding things, blah 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 blah. But man, I think where for so long I didn't live readily near these sorts of shops. Ringwood doesn't have anything like that. Gillingham doesn't have anything like that at all. Everything is an hour away from Gillingham. But now, being much closer, I'd forgotten how much I liked just perusing the shelves, especially HMV, where you have a horror section, you have a 4K section, you have your collector's edition sections, where they've even got a row for second sight films. They've got rows for Criterion Collection, BFI, 88 Films, Arrow Films. It's a nerd's heaven, I think. definitely. But I picked up a few films. I picked up Pearl, so I finally got the Blu-ray trilogy of X, Pearl, and Maxine. Picked up Bram Stoker's Dracula because I had been meaning to watch that for a while. I do note that it's recently gone on to BBC iPlayer, Prime Video, but it quite often goes back off those packages. So I've kind of been digging, wanting to go back into that. It's quite a campy film, but it's visually very, very impressive. And then also, sorry, I'm still fighting a cough. But then also, I finally got around to watching Trap, the M. Night Shyamalan thriller starring Josh Hartnett. So we're going to have that reviewed a bit later on. We are also going to be reviewing a new film where the embargo actually lifts today at time of recording. We're going to review the new Street Trash. Street Trash comes out on theatrical release 10th of January, digital and home. Blu-ray release 17th of February. Excuse me. So we've been able to get an advanced viewing of that. And then after that, we are going to get into the Ghoulies. We've got a few different categories. I'll go through them a bit later on. I'll talk through the films that have kind of been on my mind when thinking of these various categories, and then give you my awards. Against prior years where I've probably put some awards music on, I've put a nice background on, and I've got, the various artworks on screen as per usual review, where we had the review artwork. I haven't done that this year. I just haven't collated the images, and like we've mentioned before, the YouTube views are doing something kind of weird, and it very much is still the case. So, if this is mainly hitting podcast platforms, which I very much appreciate, then those little things don't matter. If it is things that people do miss, they like to watch the videos and see, the relevant artwork. Let me know. Let me know on the socials, ministry_horror on X, or, Twitter, whatever it's now called. Anyway, there's no horror news, so we're not going to get the horror news jingles. I'm ever so sorry, but we do have reviews, so you get the review music. Boom. Straight in. So, I did the piece in the chat. Oh, so it's not Judgment Day. No. Absolutely not. So, first up in the reviews, we are going with M. Night Shyamalan's Trap, 2024 American psychological thriller film written, directed, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Josh Hartnett, Ariel Donahue, Salika Night Shyamalan, Hayley Mills, and Alison Pill. It follows a serial killer evading a police blockade while attending a concert with his daughter. Now, as per usual, we will talk a little bit about the film, a little bit about the plot, the highs, the lows, and then I'm going to give that film a score out of 10. So, a little bit about the plot on this one. It does have a Wikipedia page, and I don't have to rely on my very poor memory. Philadelphia firefighter Cooper Abbott takes his teenage daughter, Riley, to a pop star Lady Ravens concert as a reward for her good grades. There, Cooper notices the unusually high police presence around the concert venue. He learns from a vendor named Jamie that the FBI plans to catch a serial killer known as the Butcher, having learned he will be in attendance. Cooper, who is the Butcher, secretly checks footage on his phone of his latest captive victim, Spencer, in a basement. He steals Jamie's ID card and learns the passphrase that will identify him as an employee, using the card to gain access to a back room and steal a police radio. So, and it kind of goes on from there, but very much it gets straight into the setup of this, and it kind of goes against the traditional grain of an M. Night Shyamalan film, and that is in terms of what's the twist. Because by gum, by golly, by geez, there usually is a twist. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it did become a little bit of a trope, a bit of a gimmick, after his first few films. It was like, oh, what's the Shyamalan twist? You go from being like, oh, what are we going to... How's it going to turn on its head this time, to then just expecting it and it becoming, more and more laughable as it went on. He did have a career resurgence with Split, which I did think was brilliant. And I never got around to seeing Glass. I didn't hear great things about it. And Old, didn't think was very good, to be honest. And I haven't seen Knock at the Cabin, which I think is him. Did he do Knock at the Cabin? Let me have a little look. Yeah, Knock at the Cabin. Didn't see it. But with this, the twist is kind of revealed very, very early on. And that is in regards to Cooper Abbott, this loving, doting father, who's a bit of a dweeb. But it does seem genuine, his affection for his daughter. Taking her to this pop concert. And throughout the concert sections of the film, we're basically getting various songs being performed by Lady Raven, played by Salika Night Shyamalan, the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, the songs feel very much what you'd expect the youth of today to listen to. Not to sound like old man shouting at clouds, but it felt like it could well have been authentic, like it could well have been like, a current pop star. And as I say, we get the twist fairly early on. There isn't like another later on big final third act twist in the film. It's not quite like that. No. But we then get this kind of dual role from Josh Hartnett where he is trying to portray the local dad, just wants to do right by his daughter. But also, a lot of panic is setting in because he's quickly realizing that the police, the FBI, and also a big-time FBI profiler are here trying to capture him. We find out through discussions a lot more about the crimes, the various crimes that have occurred, and we also get a little bit of an insight into his psyche, as quite often he sees an elderly woman that no one else sees, and she disappears when he takes a glance away. But this doesn't go the route that I was expecting it to. Now, the trailers gave it an interesting kind of setup, but it made it feel like it's going to be a bit one note, a bit of a one trick pony. It wasn't like that, actually. It subverted my expectations and kind of over delivered, really. I think because I'd heard that reviews for this at the time of its cinematic release weren't great. My expectations generally a bit lower, but I still was interested to watch it. And I love physical media, so it kind of went hand in hand to pick it up, and it was on offer as well. So what are you going to do? But from that point, we get a really great performance from Josh Hartnett. He, as the film is getting into the second act, the second half of the film, and we're moving towards the third act, we are getting to see the real individual under this layer. But it's not even just so much that, because rather than having the veil slip and then here's who they really are, he essentially is almost two people without it being like a split personality deal. It's very much a case of I have separate lives. This life, this murderer life, that's one thing, but that does not interact with my family life. It's almost like they are just, this is what I do here, this is what I do here. The two things shall not cross, there shall be no overlap. It's quite interesting, actually. In terms of it being horror, it's certainly more of a thriller. There's not really any violence in the film. There's a bit of a confrontation later on, without kind of giving too much away, but there's never really any shocking violence. There's a bit of a trap, a bit of a diversion that's set up at one point, which is a bit nasty, but it never kind of goes overtly grotesque in that area. As I say, wasn't really expecting a huge amount from this film, but I had a pretty good time, actually. Kept my attention throughout. I don't have any negatives really to say. I think Josh Hartnett was pretty good in it. I think the rest of the cast are pretty good in this. Alison Pill, who appears later on, I won't say in what role, was a very, 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 very interesting performance. Kept me kind of guessing kept me guessing. The very end of the film, little bit cheesy, just a little bit, not enough to kind of ruin anything, but in terms of what they were maybe setting up with the particular final moment. Okay, all right. Do I necessarily want to see it go down that route? Probably not. But I can't fault them for having that sort of ending. I guess in this kind of climate, you almost want to franchise things. I maybe have said too much. But I'm going to give Trap 7 out of 10. I certainly think it's much better than the general consensus that I saw online, which was that the film sucks, but Josh Hartnett's pretty good in it. I thought the film was decent. Actually, much better than I was expecting. 7 out of 10. And then finally on the reviews, we have from Lightbulb Film Distribution, coming to the cinemas 10th of January 2025 with a digital and at-home release on Blu-ray 17th of February 2025, we have Ryan Kruger's Street Trash. So, in the year 2050, global economic turmoil has destroyed the middle class in Cape Town, South Africa, which is now divided between the ultra-rich and the displaced. Ronald and a group of fellow houseless friends uncover a plot by the local government to wash away the houseless population with a sinister chemical agent called V. Now they must risk everything to expose the truth and resist a society that's determined to erase them. Tagline for the film is Melt the Rich. So, this is a reimagining, remake, requel to the original film, Street Trash from 1987. There we go. We got there eventually. I've never actually seen the original Street Trash. It's a film where I'm familiar with the artwork, familiar with the name. I think it's a bit of a gonzo. Is it like a Lloyd Kaufman production potentially? I don't know if it's a Troma film or if it's like Troma adjacent. But never got around to watching it. I mean, with Troma, I have a mixed level of interest. I have had short films released via Troma, which is obviously very, very cool. So I'm not going to be overtly critical. But then I have, seen films like Toxic Avenger, which has got a cult following. I did not like that at all. Have to say, did not like that at all. But that brings us to Street Trash 2024, this pseudo sequel. It's kind of a sequel in as much as it's not doing the exact same story, as far as I understand, of the first film, but it's not necessarily, as what I can gather, fans of the first film may well be able to correct me, it's not necessarily following on in that regard. So. Okay, so where to start with this? It's low budget fare. It is low budget fare, but it has that kind of love letter to the 80s feel to it, where you've got some decent sets, but it's quite over the top and cheesy in places. I mean, like, the acting ranges from decent to pretty laughable. We have there's a number of people I'm not that familiar with: Sean Cameron, Michael, Joe Vars, Shirai Meyer playing Pup, Warwick Grier, Ryan Kruger, the director, plays Reggie. There's also a chap, I don't know which one he is, but I know who's in Fried Barry, which I didn't really get on with either, which is another Ryan Kruger film. That chap is this kind of crazy homeless guy who also has this weird blue alien that only he can see, that is very overtly sexed. There's a lot of penis mutilation in this film, just to put it very bluntly, and it's a real oddball film. So it is gory, but the gore is like paint. Like, it looks and again, I don't know if that is genuine, like a homage to the original, but in this, the melting element is basically these bubbles will appear when they've ingested, inhaled, um, drank, whatever this agent. It then causes their neck, their face to bubble and explode. But it's done in such a way that it just looks incredibly low budget. Like the effects are quite, they're quite. I mean, the thing with the film is at the heart of it, it is just having fun, and you do end up having fun watching it when you can kind of get past the fact that the story is maybe one of the stronger points, but the way that it is executed is really kind of a gonzo style with nonsense gore where paint is exploding from people. It is paint, it's not blood. It is like luminous green, luminous blue paint that just shoots out from people as they explode. Now, as the deaths go on later on in the film, it does get more and more over the top with the explosions, the bodies exploding. But it feels very much that I maybe would have to have watched Fried Barry again before this, because Fried Barry, I think I got 20 minutes in and thought, I don't think this is my sort of film, to be honest. It's kind of like an uber gory but nonsense gore version of something like The Greasy Strangler. Kind of like those sensibilities of where it's just weird, mad, but also madcap, and also violent, but in a slapstick way almost. Yeah, it's very difficult for me to kind of verbalize because I didn't dislike the film. It's not something that really kind of spoke to me. There weren't particular performances in this that I thought stood above and beyond the rest. I mean, Donna Carmack Thompson as Alex leads the female. Well, she's like the sole female really in the film, other than a couple of the homeless that die quite briefly. Um, and Sean Cameron Michael Ronald, they're really the leads in the film, and there's not really much more that I can kind of say on that. I mean, there is this character called the Rat King that appears briefly that is quite grotesque, and does give you an element of creepiness, but not enough to kind of make the film ever feel terrifying. You know, it's not one of those sorts of horrors. It's more so madcap is the best way I can describe it. And there's moments when one of the characters is running away with a stolen briefcase and has the cheesiest slip up on some newspaper. Like, I did get the feeling that sometimes a lot of this was one take shots, which I can't be too critical of, as I am prone, whether it's recording music or whether it's shooting a film, to kind of go, yeah, we got that in one take. And then maybe look back at it when it comes to the edit and go, oh, actually, we haven't really got any coverage now, have we? Shit. Okay, well, we have to use that. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting little film. But did I get enough out of it for me to say I enjoyed it? No. But was there enough negativity in my experience to say I disliked it? No. It kind of falls in that ballpark of the middle, which is why I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 10. It just, yeah, it's unique, it's oddball, it's manic, it's gonzo, it's ridiculous. It is fun, but it is very, 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 very odd. 4.5 for Street Trash. So, Ghouls and Fiends. My voice is rapidly going. Ghouls and Fiends. It is time for us to do the 2024 annual Ghoulie Awards. So each year since the Ministry of Horror's been going, I think this must be the third Ghoulie Awards. It must be. I don't think it's the fourth. I can't remember when the show started. I want to say 2022. But for people that don't know, the Ghoulies is a now annual tradition where at the end of the year, we take a look back at some of the horror films that I've enjoyed, and I talk about, you know, where I feel they land in the pantheon of releases. So we have a number of standard categories. There's probably some which I haven't done this year because I forgot, and there's probably some which are brand new. But we are gonna start off strong. Let me just reorder these. I do kind of feel like I should have set up the artwork to appear on screen now, but you know, this is more of an audio-based show these days, based on the numbers. So we'll stick with just discussing. So I'm going to start off with. I'll just talk about some of the films that I've enjoyed. I'll talk about some of the films that I've kind of hated. And that'll then give you an idea of what I am kind of looking at as my general scope for best and worst of the year. So the films that I've really enjoyed in 2024 have been Late Night with the Devil, which I think was originally a 2023 festival release, but I saw it in its UK premiere or UK advanced screening 2024. Immaculate, Infested, Abigail, New Life, The Passenger, Stop Motion, In a Violent Nature, Maxine, Longlegs, Alien Romulus, Speak No Evil, Oddity, Strange Darling, Terrifier 3, Smile 2, Azrael, The Substance, Cuckoo, and Mads. They're the films that stood out to me the most when I've kind of taken a look back at a few of the films that I've reviewed this year. Now, with the best, there always comes the films that didn't hit the heights for me. And these are ones that they weren't necessarily actually 2024 releases. One or two of these might have come out tail end 2023. Or they were made in 2023, didn't get released till 2024. But History of Evil, Night Swim, Alice in Terrorland, The Jester, Sorry Charlie, Jack in the Box Rises, and The Strangers Chapter 1. They're the films that really stuck out to me as did not like them. Didn't like them one bit. So that gives you a little bit of a bit of guesswork on what we're going to be working with in terms of the winners. Now, Eddie in the chat says Winnie the Pooh 2. So I would have included Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey in my worst. But I understand that film definitely didn't come out this year. The sequel did, and I haven't seen the sequel, so I have to remain objective and say I can't include that because the one that I have watched wasn't released this year and I hated it. And because I hated it, I haven't watched the sequel yet. So we'll leave that out. Okay, so starting off, best villain, best antagonist, best killer in a film. The ones that kind of stood out for me, there's two that really kind of stood out. Well, three. I'll say three that kind of stood out head and shoulders above the rest in terms of notable villains. There were the spiders, the infected spiders in Infested, the French Shudder original. Obviously, that's more of a collective, and I'd also, include that with the xenomorphs in Alien Romulus. Although you could also include, even though it's a brief role at the end of the film, the hybrid alien. But I'd say the Infested, the spiders from Infested, and to the same extent the xenomorphs from Alien Romulus. But I can't look at anyone else for best villain of the year other than Art the Clown in Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3 was again a lot of fun. It took the format, the formula of the second film, where we've now got a bit of story. We're implementing a little bit more lore, but still not enough to give you a full-on feeling of what really is going on. But we've now got a little bit of a better idea of the demonic entities at play and what is driving Art the Clown. You know, he essentially is no longer alive. He's been brought back to life in a way, but possessed. And we got some gnarly kills in it from Art. I mean, Art he's known for his kills and known how gleefully he enacts these murders. He has to be the best villain for me. And it's something I never thought I'd say after really disliking Terrifier 1. And I do feel I need to give Terrifier 1 a rewatch, considering I have become a fan via Terrifier 2 and also Terrifier 3. I think Terrifier 3 is maybe not quite as good as Terrifier 2, but it's a more streamlined film. It's still about 2 hours long. And Terrifier 2 did not need to be as long as it was, but it's got some great kills. It's got some great kills, that's for sure. But in terms of the villainry, I mean, Art the Clown, it's such a uniquely creepy, comical appearance. He butchers anything really. You have to have a bit of a strong stomach when it comes to Art the Clown. God, I am struggling with this. Not with this cold, but when it's just the more you talk, the more your nose gets all nasally. It's annoying. So, best villain, Art the Clown. Best kill. So, there's a few that spring to mind. There is. There's a moment in Smile 2 where her mother appears to stab herself in the eye with a shard of glass that then flings the eyeball out of her head. I mean, that was gnarly. There's the shower scene in Terrifier 3, which starts with Art the Clown mullering a couple having sex in the shower with a chainsaw, ending in him basically bisecting one of them, and then creating snow angels in blood angels. I mean, that's pretty damn gnarly. There's a particular kill in stop motion that was quite disturbing when our main character I can't remember her name, but she's essentially fully lost the plot. And I think a particular kill that stood out for me in Maxine was the car crushing scene when Kevin Bacon's character is slowly crushed in an industrial car compactor in a junkyard. But it is between two kills in a violent nature. With I can't remember who the killer is in a violent nature, but the big hulking guy who we are following throughout. It's between the more famous kill in that, which would be the yoga death on the mountaintop, where he has like a hook. He like kind of punches through this woman's chest, then he puts the hook through her mouth or her head, and then he pulls that through her. It's the sort of thing where you can't really describe it. You almost have to just see it and go, "What the hell have I just watched?" But the particular kill in that, which I don't really hear anyone mention, but it was the one that made my toes curl. It made me grimace. It was just so uncomfortable to watch. Was the sheriff or the deputy, where our killer, Johnny, I think his name is Johnny, has appeared to break his back. I mean, I remember in my review saying it isn't exactly clear what has happened in that moment, but he's done something that's incapacitated the sheriff. Dragged him into this woodshed where you've got this industrial woodcutter where you lay down logs. It has this long mechanized arm that then just pushes an axe head down and then it moves the log off. And he dismembers this person. on it, and that person can't move. They just can't do anything while their limbs and then head are just taken off in such a slow manner. And I think that's the thing that just makes it so uncomfortable to watch. Is it's just so protracted, and you know that this is coming. You know nothing's going to change. You know, based on the type of film, we're following the antagonist through this, who is just uber violent and just ridiculous. That I would say is probably the best kill, just because it was just it was so affecting. It wasn't just a case of over the top violence score. You know, it for me it was the kill that I saw in this year's films where I just thought, fucking hell, that was ridiculous. Funniest horror. Funniest horror might be a new one, but I feel comedy and horror do go fairly hand in hand. Obviously, not all the time, because you know sometimes you just want a terrifying thrill fest. But funniest horror stood out to me because one of the films I enjoyed this year, and there weren't really any other contenders that spring to mind, but Abigail. I thought Abigail was a really, really fun slice of vampiric horror. And the particular moment in this that stood out as the funniest scene, funniest horror, is the onions scene when they deduce that they're being hunted by a vampire, or they've seen that it's a vampire, and they deduce that they need to think about what takes out a vampire. One of the characters says, "Oh, we need some garlic." One of the other characters runs off to the kitchen and comes back with a bag of onions. It was just watching it in the cinema. We all just cracked a laugh. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. So, moving on to best protagonist. Now, there's a number of films where our protagonist was almost the anti-hero, was almost the antagonist from some aspects. And that was partially why initially I was feeling that the woman, as she's known, or Electric Lady, I believe, in Strange Darling would be our best protagonist. But they are almost the antagonist, although it's just the way that the film is set up in chapters, and the chapters are shown in non-consequential, or non-consecutive, or consequential order, whatever the exact terminology is. I know I'm saying that wrong. Out of sequence, let's just say that. I make myself sound like more of an idiot. She does a brilliant role in that, where we feel that she is being under pursuit by a character known as the Demon. Before we actually find out that, okay, no, this person's trying to get revenge because they're not actually that good of a person, depending on what way you look at it. So I did like that subversion of expectations with the formatting there, the characterizations in Strange Darling. But I do actually think my best protagonist winner is going to be, I believe her name's Sky Riley from Smile 2. Now, Smile 2 is one of the horrors from this year that the general consensus that I've seen online, and my feelings agree with this, is that it's far better than the original. Far better than the original. I do enjoy Smile. I mean, I remember seeing it at the cinema and being like, okay, yeah, it was decent. And on rewatches, I found myself enjoying it a lot more, definitely. But Smile 2 just has some creepy ass sequences in it, and you really do feel the plight for Sky. I mean, it's not always been a easy road for her. She's incredibly troubled, but I just feel that the mixture of her characterization and also the performance. I'm not familiar with the actress. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. She is brilliant in that film. It really was, for me, a star-making performance. I know that some people are familiar with her from different roles, but I thought she was excellent. That Smile 2 was a film I greatly enjoyed this year. Which then brings me to best sequel. I had to include Smile 2 in my considerations for best sequel because it it went above and beyond what the previous film did. We got a little bit more of the lore, but ultimately it's, again, another character has now got this curse themselves. How are they dealing with it? And it just went down such a route that really pulled the rug out from under you as the film, reached its climax. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I also had a great time with Maxine. I thought Maxine was brilliant. I absolutely loved the fact that it had that giallo tone to it. The production had this real 80s film grain to it. Even the titles had that grainy effect that made it just feel like you're watching a VHS of a film made in 86 or something like that. It was great. I think the finale was all right. The finale wasn't amazing. It didn't really kind of match the enjoyment of the first 2/3 of the film, but the very end of it I thought worked out nicely. But for me, it has to be Alien Romulus. It's not the perfect film, but it's not the perfect film, but it is easily jumped into my top 3 Alien films. It's not better than Alien or Aliens. I mean, Alien is brilliant. Aliens is one of my favourite films, just ever. But Romulus did such a good job of bringing me back into that world. It didn't do what Prometheus and Covenant did of, showing the technology we have now to create these amazing visuals and these incredible spacecrafts without really acknowledging the fact that this is a prequel. This is coming prior to Alien, where the tech looked a lot more archaic through this lens compared to the tech that we're seeing in a film set 70 odd years prior. How do you explain that? Romulus landed us into a world that just felt like it fit to me. We saw more of what the world is like on a space station on the moon, run by Weyland-Yutani. So we got a much greater idea of just how Weyland-Yutani runs when it comes to mining. We've always had the idea that they want to get the aliens, they want to bioweaponize them, evil corporation. But we're really seeing actually how dark they are, not just in their experimentations, but also just in how they run these off-world colonies that they operate. The lead characters I thought were excellent. Andy and Kaylee. And Kaylee Spain is the actress. I can't remember the character's name. I should have done some research prior. I thought those were brilliant. I loved really pretty much everything about Alien Romulus. I mean, there was one of the characters, the British lad, the uber British lad, who was annoying. He did my head in. So much so that I basically cheered when he died. But outside of that, I thought we got some pretty good kills. I really did like the hybrid. I know some people didn't, but I thought, okay, this is nice. This is creepy. It's something we haven't seen before. Or if we could liken it to the newborn, it's a better version of that, I feel. The only thing that I just didn't like about Romulus was the "get away from her, you bitch." That line was just like too fan servicey for me. It didn't fit in. I get that he kept being called bitch by the bully of the group, and he never swore, and so you could liken it to him saying, this is the first time he's swearing, blah 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 blah. It wasn't necessary, because that line just needed to be in Aliens. Just Aliens. Leave it there. Leave it at the door. Naomi Scott, Eddie the Beast says in the chat, is that the actress in Smile 2? I think that is, yeah. She's very, very good. So Alien Romulus, I'm giving best sequel. Now, best remake. So I don't think I actually watched that many horror remakes this year. I don't know how many there were. There's probably quite a few that flew under the radar. But the one that surprised me the most, because I remember thinking it looked wank from the trailers. Maybe that's because the trailers kept getting shown a lot. But Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil is, for me, the best remake of the year. Quite easily. As the director of Eden Lake, which I wasn't aware of, well, it hadn't really registered with me to begin with going into the film, but prior to getting tickets for this, I did a little bit of reading, and I was like, oh shit, this guy did Eden Lake. That is a film that is a gut punch. It's a harrowing watch. It's one of my films that is definitely a one watch film. It's good. It's a good film, but I've not got any interest in giving it a rewatch. There's a handful of films, I suppose, also like This Is England. Powerful film. That finale, the attack at the end of the film was just felt real. Obviously, I know it wasn't, but it felt so realistic that I'm just like, you know what? I don't need to rewatch that. I don't need to rewatch that. So I felt that based on the original Danish production, that we might be in good hands here. I didn't necessarily think it would go exactly the route that one did, because that's such a dark and nihilistic film by the finale. But for about the first half, 2/3 of this film, it is pretty faithful. Pretty faithful to the original. I think James McAvoy is just brilliant in this, along with, oh god, she was in Terminator Dark Fate. Can't remember her name. Help me out in the chat. She's brilliant in this film as well. And I think it was quite smart altering the finale, because we do go into a bit of straw dogs territory. And I do think that works well. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than the original, but I just think that original ending would probably turn off your general Western audience, or your general, not Western audience, because the original's Western, but your general English-speaking viewing audience probably aren't going to want to watch that in the cinema, because it is just quite disturbing. You need a bit of a cheer, to some extent at least. And there's no cheering. There's no cheering in the original. It's just tense, uncomfortable, tense, brutal. Whereas this is tense, uncomfortable, tense, and then come on, you can do it. Get out of there, just get out of there. Oh no, not Sarah Connor, Eddie in the chat. I can't remember the actress's name, but it'll come to me later. But Speaking of Evil is, for me, the best remake of 2024. Best sequence. Okay, so there's a few that come to mind for me. Whether that's a finale, whether that's an opening. There's a few films that really did sort of stick out to me for certain sequences. I enjoyed in Alien Romulus the zero gravity alien blood scene. I know some people rolled their eyes because, whatever their opinion, whatever they find enjoyment in, but did not like the idea of, shooting all the xenomorphs and then kind of getting around the acid blood by having it go in zero gravity. But I thought it was a fun sequence. I enjoyed that. Other sequences that spring to mind, I mean, I really dug the final fight scene in Terrifier 3. A special shout out, I think, to Longlegs. I think such an uncomfortable finale in Longlegs. And I know I've not mentioned that yet, but that was really up there. I thought Longlegs was absolutely excellent. And I think the sequence in that would probably be either the finale or the interrogation with Longlegs. That stuck out to me. As I mentioned earlier on, stop motion had a few moments that just made my skin crawl. And The Passenger is a brilliant thriller that Carl Gallner just demands your attention in that film. Not the winner, but Late Night with the Devil. I really, really, really liked the creepiness of the hypnosis scene when the character believes that worms are coming out of his body, and then one massive one comes out of his eyeball. The best sequence for me is the final half an hour or so of The Substance. The Substance is a film that I watched on Mubi with a free membership for a week. Hearing good things about it, didn't catch it at the cinema. I thought it looked pretty interesting at the cinema. I had this real... Eddie in the chat. Mackenzie Davis, that's correct. Thank you, Eddie. Yeah, Mackenzie Davis in Speaking of Evil was brilliant. But The Substance... I didn't really know what to expect. I thought, okay, this looks weird. It's getting a hell of a lot of buzz. The director did Revenge, which is a pretty damn good film. But other than having Debbie Moore in it, I don't really know a lot about it. It became kind of one of my favourites of the year. It just had my attention. The sheen, the gloss of the film, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. The story, I think, is brilliant, and it's just so imaginative. And when we get into the finale, the final half hour or so, where I can't say too much if you haven't seen the film, I don't want to give away spoilers, but it goes full on body horror gore fest with these almost kind of Stuart Gordon, Sam Raimi esque body mashups. It's just diabolical. It's ridiculous, but in such a good way. If you haven't seen The Substance, I would highly recommend it because it's a gorgeous film to watch, and the performances in it are just spellbinding. But the best sequence for me just has to be that final half hour or so, because I was just glued to the screen because I just couldn't look away. It was mad, mad insanity. We're going to move on now to worst film of the year for me. Now, I would initially say Alice in Terrorland because that was absolute dog shite, but that technically did come out in 2023. I just saw it a bit late. I did not like Sorry Charlie at all. I thought The Strangers Chapter 1 was wank, and I've got no interest in watching Chapter 2. I will if it comes to Prime. I will, so I can review it for the show, but I'm certainly not spending my hard-earned dosh at the cinema. The Jester, yeah, shit. Night Swim was shit, but History of Evil. History of Evil was such a big old bag of horse shit. It had this interesting setup of this world where there's like paramilitary groups, there's, individuals who are harboring someone who's a relative of theirs who happened to write a book that caused a bit of an uprising. But then you got this ghost story, it just doesn't really seem to go anywhere. It's one of these films that's shot well, it's got good production values, it's got decent enough actors in it. No one named, but it looks pretty decent. But you're just left wondering, what? How did the story of this get greenlit? And did no one kind of question, like, why are we putting this much effort into a film that kind of just seems a bit shit? And I know it's subjective. It comes down to interpretation. It comes down to potentially the director's vision not coming across as well as intended, potentially. I don't know, but I just remember watching it and thinking, this is absolute arse. It blows chunks. Worst film of the year for me, History of Evil. And then that brings us to the best film. So I'd almost consider I've had a little bit more time to enumerate on it, or ruminate, whatever the correct word is. I think I'm just messing up my words tonight. I'd almost include Mads in that just because it's such an achievement. It's gripping. The performances in it are brilliant. If it is genuinely a one-take film, then I think that's just, that should be getting included in Academy Awards like the proper Academy. Late Night with the Devil, excellent time watching that, but it did technically get released initially in 2023. Maxine, I really did enjoy, but like I say, I think the finale was all right. It wasn't great, it was all right. Long Legs is definitely up there for me because I just absolutely, Micah Monroe is brilliant. I thought it was just such a unique experience. I love the music in it. I thought Nicolas Cage was so creepy. I like that, just that it went down. I say you're typical, but it's not done very often very well. The satanic route. I think if you get a good story set in a contemporary setting that then has these satanic undertones, it's got my interest. It had that with House of the Devil when that was released a few years ago. Setting in House of the Devil set in the 70s, this is set in the mid-90s. But having in that kind of contemporary setting and then having essentially the devil reveal or the appearances throughout the film, I really dug that, but it wasn't quite my film of the year. Oddity was very unique, had some good sequences. I should have mentioned that best sequences. But I don't think it was brilliant. I enjoyed it. It wasn't brilliant. Terrifier 3, I thought was a great addition to that series. Azrael, I thought was very, very, very good. But Strange Darling. Strange Darling, went to the cinema to see that on my birthday. And I just thought, okay, this is cinema. And I'm not saying that in terms of like, oh, it's like a big blockbuster. This is cinema. This is, big explosions. But no, it's taking a interesting story, not overly complicated, but an interesting story. Some nice twists and turns, great performances from the leads. Carl Gallner and fuck me, why can't I remember anyone's names? Let's have a look. She's called like Strange Darling. Apparently that's a 2023 film as well, but it was cinematically released in 2024. Willa Fitzgerald as the lady. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant performance in this film. I loved it. I thought it looked exquisite. I thought the twists in the story, in the narrative, worked great. Kept me guessing. And it just led to a really, really great conclusion with quite a shocking ending. But it worked in a really, really nice way. Like I dug it. I really dug it, And so that's why for me, Strange Darling has to be my film of the year. But it's hotly contested. We had some great films in 2024. Which then leads us into 2025, peeps. We are almost there. With that being said, I was gonna hopefully do like a bit of a preview for the coming year, but we didn't get there. The time didn't happen. But what we will do is in the early new year, we will do a bit of a preview of the films coming for 2025 and hopefully have a review of Nosferatu, because I am hoping to see that a bit later this week. I'm very excited to watch Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. And I am also hoping to review in the next week or so Last Voyage of the Demeter. It's currently on offer on Amazon Prime from their store. So I'm tempted, although the physical release comes out in a couple of months. I might just do that. I don't want to spend money on it twice, but I do want to watch it. And I know that it's had quite a laboured release, so we shall see. But anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, if you are watching live and want to stick around, I think we will do a little bit of a watch party. Part of me was tempted to initially set up my N64 and do some streaming, because it's something we've talked about for a while, doing a retro game stream. But currently, there's just so much stuff in my office that I would have to move a lot just to get to my N64 to then plug it in and blah, 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 blah. All of that jazz. I'm making excuses now, but it's valid. What we will do is we will do a watch party. Now, part of me did want to initially say, I'm not going to do a watch party. I want to watch some of the football. But the team that I support, who I would normally be called a glory hunter for supporting, but they've been awful for the last few seasons, they're currently losing. Yeah. So I'm kind of not in a rush to watch that. Although saying that, there's another team that are losing. Oh yeah, this is not just my team losing. Anyway, stick around. We're going to do a little watch party. But thank you for listening or watching Ghouls and Fiends. If you're watching on YouTube, Ministry of Horror, check out the channel. Give it a like. Give the videos, a share. Subscribe to the channel. All that good stuff. Just, because at some point I'm probably going to just stop uploading to YouTube, just because whatever has gone on the YouTube channel is just a bit weird. How the views have just completely died for the last 4 or 5 shows. So I don't know what's going on there, but if it becomes a case of it's not really worth my time exporting and importing a video, then we won't do that anymore. Ultimately, that is what that is. But I really appreciate people that do watch on YouTube, but also if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other platform that it lands on, the listening levels are always pretty nice to see. We've got a big listening base in America, UK, also China, along with a number of other countries, Turkey, Germany. Really, really cool to see. So thank you very much. And also, socials, ministry_horror on X or Ministry of Horror on TikTok. I will get better at more regularly putting up TikToks. I have sort of fallen off TikToks during this holiday season. It's been very, very busy, and my TikToking has dropped off somewhat. But I will try and make a more concerted effort to get back onto that. So yeah, stick around. Anyway, if you're watching live, stick around. We'll do a little watch party, a watch along. But otherwise, Ghouls and Fiends, I'll catch you in 2025.